Hey guys, welcome to Hooked, the kayak angler's resource. My boy Jonathan, how we doing?
I'm good, man. It's been a minute. We haven't been on here. It's been a busy year, crazy year, but we're back. We're gonna get after it, get to you guys some content, answer some questions. I'm looking forward to get back into this, man.
So am I. We got a lot of stuff to kind of talk about today with the, kind of a recap on the Big Bass 250, kind of what's going on around the scene.
Yeah, man. I was excited about the 250. Crazy year, good year, really cool stories. And we're actually going to talk to some of the guys that finished second and third, Adam and Jordan, in our next podcast. And but man, it was overwhelming, the excitement, the joy, the stories from the 250. Seriously, guys, we said it last year, but I think we've got something good going on, and you need to be a part of it. We're working on this year, next year's 250 already, getting dates and whatnot. But what was the most impressive giveaway that we had there, you think?
Oh, I mean, I'm guessing either the Hobie or the Old Town.
Yeah.
We had an Old Town Sportsman 120,
both pedal drives,
and the Hobie Outback. But man, we gave away motors. We gave away, with Torpedo and Newports, Bixby's, and Sniper Marine coming in to throw that to the winner was kind of a cool prize, because that's not a monster company that just has all that stuff to give, and they wanted to make sure that the winner took one of those home. So I thought that was a cool gift that not everybody just goes out and buys. So yeah, man, there's some cool stuff.
And they're a really great mount, pricey mount, but they're really good.
They're amazing.
But yeah, Chris Longshore ended up taking the W along with 15 grand, a Sniper Marine pole, and gosh, he just had a day.
Absolutely. You won't hear it from him either. I mean, he's a quiet guy, and
we try to get him on here too. He's like, nah, it's not my style. But we did a really good. JT did a really good write up on it and talked to him, and it was really cool to see his story.
And a great angler and a great guy.
Yeah.
I mean, mentoring a young angler while he's doing it.
Yeah.
Just couldn't ask for a better guy to be part of our tournament. And then, that just really pushed what we like about our tournament, and that is the experience, guys.
Yeah.
There are a lot of good tournaments out there. I think that the one thing that has been sort of lost in the tournament series, in everybody's tournament, is the camaraderie and the fellowship aspect of just, and that's my favorite part about the 250 is, Jeff Mallett, Kayak Bass Nation, he was there, and he talked to me a lot about the fact that it's just very cool that afterwards we have the dinner.
Yeah.
We have, refreshments, and everybody can just sit around and tell stories. And that's, as this thing gets bigger, what we're really enjoying is it's no longer guys that you see on the trail all the time talking. Now all of a sudden you got a guy from, Little Rock, Arkansas, talking to a guy from Des Moines, Iowa.
Yeah.
That's, looking at a table full of guys from Nebraska.
Yeah, 22 of them.
Yeah, 22. Those guys came strong, and I think they will again next year. And that's that was the whole reason we wanted to originally do this, is to put together just a really celebration tournament. That's why we come super strong with the giveaways. When you asked what was the best giveaway, sheer volume was the best, I think.
Yeah.
Just the fact that between Eco Fishing Shop and our vendors, it's amazing. Everybody gets to go home with a little something. But then, like I said, it's just the fact that it's just a hangout.
Yeah,
is impressive.
Yeah, it was really cool to hear guys put in their thoughts as well, like how to expand it. Like, Jeff was talking like, what about an after party? What about a band? Like, and that's what it's about. It's about fishing all day and whatnot. It could go your way, it could go not, but it's all about the celebration afterwards. Like that's what we're chasing, is that experience and that angler focused kayak. There's a lot of tournament angler kayak tournaments like that are guys that are serious, but this is just about anyone and whoever. Chris Longshore, he had Coda fishing with them the entire day. And actually, I've talked to Coda's mom, and I think we're going to get him on here too, and hear his side of the story. But he was stoked. Like we did the Garmin giveaway. Garmin did a Striker fish finder, and And we're like, this would be perfect for someone just getting into it. So we found the youngest entry, and he went away with a fish finder. Come to find out, there were some other guys that had got won some of the YakAttack accessories that they're like, hey man, I don't need these. Take this home. And just to hear his story, his experience, just being a young kid, it's one of those things like you can tell that kid he's probably going to do this a lot more in his life just off of one experience. And
I've said it a lot on here. The difference between the kayak community and most others is phenomenal. I mean, and this is the second year we've done the tournament. It's also the second year that someone has expressed doing something for the youngest angler, which, we'll be coming up with updates and letting everybody know what we're going to be doing. One thing we're going to do better at this year with the 250 is getting information out there sooner. We're hoping to have a date set here by the end of the year, so everybody knows when it's going to be. But Mr. B comes strong. This is the second year he's done something.
Mr. B. All right, this is Mr. B, and he says he looks like the guy from Up.
We're probably going to call that the Mr. B Youth Angler Award, and he's coming strong again next year.
And the story behind that is he's coming here, bought a kayak from a super nice guy, but he bought it for his grandkids. And his son fishes some of the Bass Opens, like the Ozark guys, a lot of the tournament bass boat guy, and he fished the 250. Well, Mr. B, his son-in-law, won one of the kayaks, and Mr. B's like, I'm not going to take the kayak. Let's deck it out and let's give it away to a young angler like that next year. And I'm like, that's so cool. Like just the heart of wanting to do that. And it just shows like how different it is in these kayak events than it is your typical bass boat events or anything.
And he's the kind of guy we enjoy. He comes in here and we just get to shoot the breeze with him.
Always chipper.
He's a ton of fun, and really cares about the sport and getting people into the sport. Even though he's not super into it. I mean, he does fish, but he's not a tournament guy, but he supports Eco Fishing Shop, the Big Bass 250, and just all the anglers. So
100%.
Definitely props to him, and we're excited to have that award next year.
Yeah, guys. So stay tuned. We'll make sure and get you guys some dates, some ideas when we're going to do the tournament once we get stuff lined out. But year 3, I mean, if it keeps getting better, can you imagine what year 3 is going to be like? It's going to be crazy, man.
Absolutely, man. I think Kayak Bass Nation, stay tuned for information on them, because I think they're going to step up and want to handle the party side.
And those boys can party.
I told them, I said, that's all you boys.
Yeah.
Our goose is cooked by the time we're done. So if they want to take over after that, and we can all kick back, put our feet up, and just enjoy each other's time, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. So real quick, the next podcast we got coming up is with me, Adam Denningman and Jordan Westerman. They finished 2nd and 3rd, respectively, in the tournament. Super cool guys. Really liked or enjoyed talking to them, and look forward to getting that out to you guys. And but going forward, we're gonna have a different little layout on the podcast.
We are. One thing that we're gonna do is this little update. So JT works for Eco Fishing Shop. He also handles all of our Facebook and our Hooked, the Kayak Anglers Resource forums. We want to introduce you to him. Welcome, JT.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be part of it. I mean, this is something that I was super interested in. I've been with Eco now, little over a year, or well over a year now. So I'm happy to be part of this, and we can tie this really into like what we wanted to do for building a community, both online. You guys mentioned it quite a bit. And you nailed it. The kayak fishing community is so much more unique than even like the boat fishermen or any other sport that I've really been involved with. There were plenty of stories about people sharing batteries and all sorts of other things for this tournament. So I'm just happy we can kind of tie it all together in a nice web, and appreciate you guys bringing me on.
Yeah, for sure. JT does all of our forum stuff. So what's really cool about JT is he's not like me, where he's been kayak fishing for a couple years. He's super green, but it's really cool. Him personally, just like your questions, because everyone gets the same questions. Everyone's want to know how to do it. There's always something different, and it's always fun seeing you on there and talking to people. You're learning as much as you are helping people out, but it's really cool to have someone on there that's just like some of these guys that are getting involved.
And JT's really good at when there's a question asked, because JT's an angler as well. JT is in Minnesota. So a little bit different species he's after. But JT is an angler, so he answers some questions. But then that's where we've built a relationship with JT, because he'll actually call here and ask us questions, just to give good, solid answers on the forum. Also goes to our pro staff, talks to some of those guys, and really when questions are asked, he wants to know the answer, even if it's already been answered. That's where it's been fun to watch that forum grow, because it's all good, legitimate information.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think what's unique too about a forum, right, is it's an older form of like community. But if you go to Facebook and ask those questions in some groups, you might get a bunch of good answers, but that stuff is buried within a few minutes and you'll never find it again. And I just think as we grow the forum, it's not the largest yet, but the information that's in there is just archived for people to find. So I know there's people who aren't even members yet finding some of the information, in-depth discussions on how to wire your kayak with electronics, the best way to mount things, fishing, even just advice, there's all that stuff. And hopefully I don't annoy you guys too much. I do ask a lot of questions. I feel like one of the things that is a good quality is just admitting when you don't know something and asking the people who do know. And, the forum is a good spot for that, especially because you're getting information from anglers like yourself in the same position versus like a sales staff. And that's not to say a sales staff wouldn't give you great answers, but sometimes it just means more coming from a fellow angler.
Yeah, the sales staff's always trying to sell something, which makes sense, but that's why I like the forum too. There's less trolls and less people in there. Just, anybody asks a question on Facebook, you got to wade through half the junk to get a real answer. With the forum, we really want to set that up where you had guys that are answering it that have done it, guys with ideas, guys that may have done it better. We've found things on there that have changed the way we do a few things here. So it's been really good. Speaking of the forum, JT, I know that we get some forum questions and some just good, solid stuff in there. Why don't we have you ask us a few of those questions and kind of go over them and spitball a few.
Yeah, here, I'll pull up the first one. This was one we got recently. It was about what's the best way to mount a Bixby K1 outboard motor kit on a C-Stream Angler 120. I know you guys can talk a little bit more and we can share some photos and stuff of that. But I know when you go to their website, it can be a little confusing and overwhelming on what pieces actually work with what kayaks. So if you guys could kind of talk about the best way to mount some of these.
Yeah, man, for sure. The cool thing about Bixby is they make a ton of mounts.
Right.
The downside is that can get a little overwhelming. So I've got two specifically that would work fairly well with that kayak, depending on what route you want to go. So the first one they have is actually part of the rudder system. So it would replace your existing rudder, and then it has an adapter that you can add that Bixby motor to it. So the cool thing about it is it's on the rudder, so you can control the steering with that, and also gives you thrust from the rear. So it's not like it's pulling you or anything like that. That's always a little bit different versus bow mounted motors and stuff like that.
And you can raise and lower it.
Correct.
With your
Correct. If you're on shallow water with river, the nice part about that is if you do hit something, it's going to raise up.
It'll kick up.
It'll come back down because it is spring loaded. But with that, depending on that motor, I don't know about the newer motor they have, or the K1. It is a lighter motor, but you'll have some weight there, so you may have to upgrade your the way you stow and deploy it. You may have to upgrade that rope. You may have to figure out a little bit something different there to adjust to that. The other mount that they have as well, it's almost like a just standard kayak mount. So you can mount it just about anything. You can mount it on tracks, or you can hard mount it to the kayak. Gosh, what is the name of that one, JT? Do you remember?
And it will work on a power pole mount as well.
Correct. Specifically looking at that 120, but I believe it's their universal one. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick.
Is it just the universal rudder adapter?
Yep, it's a universal kayak adapter. So that one, like I said, you can mount part of it to the track, and then the other part you can hard mount it to the back of the kayak. The nice part about that one is it will come with some hooks that you can relay your existing steering to it, specifically on the C-Stream 120 PDL. But you could use that for any kayak. And for that matter, you could lock that in the straight position if you don't have a rudder system on your kayak already and give you, forward thrust, and then you could, steer with your paddle or something like that. But that gives you an option to rig it up just a little bit differently. But, specifically for that kayak, and that's kind of the other thing too, is like every kayak's a little bit different. Some of like a lot of the Jacksons, they come with a power pole mount in the back, and they sell tons of adapters that match up to that. Other ones you've got to find, pick and choose. And I think, I say this all the time, but that's why kayak fishing is so popular, is because you can do whatever you want to it.
Yeah, with a piece of 1/2-inch starboard, you can just about figure out anything. The one thing I will say, and this is not exclusive to the C-Stream 120, is they also make a pod mount that is really nice. It's super easy, but always make sure, if you're going to look at going that route, that your motor will go in and out of that hatch, because we've seen some problems with that where people will buy that thinking that's going to be perfect, and it is, except for it's almost permanent, because you can't lift your pod out because the motor is too big to come through the hatch, through that hole. So, call us anytime, get on the forum and ask. We can give any kind of dimensions and help when anybody's doing those kind of things.
JT, what other questions you got for us, man?
Not quite as complex, but what's the best way to mount the YakAttack Leverage landing net in a new canoe and just other fishing kayaks? Those nets they're big. They're extremely useful, like especially if you're fishing for bigger species and stuff. And that leverage where it kind of cups to your arm is extremely useful, but they do take up a lot of space.
Yeah, and I think that question is a little tricky, because it also depends on how you fish. And, there's guys that put it in their, if it has the foam extension handle, they'll put it in their rod holder behind them. Some guys don't like that. I've got the Sasquatch bar on the front of mine, and I put mine on the right in front of me with a roto grip.
Correct. Roto grip is probably where I would start, no matter what kayak. I would start there. The cool thing about that roto grip is it'll hold. You can always put that net on the front of your kayak, and that roto grip, you can put it off to the side, you can put it down the middle, but it'll hold that pole there, and that way it's in a stationary spot. And that's actually how I do mine too, is I lay it on the top of my hatch. I put the handle in the roto grip, and it's in that same spot every time. Now, the cool thing is they just came out with those double headers that has 2 roto grips. The logistics is a little bit different, and I know Mason Brock, this is how he does it, but that's another way that you could use those roto grips to mount that, to maybe get it outside of the kayak and get you a little bit more room. And so, a couple things to think about. How do you land the fish every time? Is it right-handed? It's left-handed. Usually it's right-handed for me because I'm using a right-handed, rod. But think about that. Think about where is it going to be able to stay? Like if you get skunked, you know what I mean? Like you want to make sure that's not in the way. You're not casting into different stuff like that. But I would start with a roto grip, just the basic roto grip by itself. You can always upgrade to the double header later that has the 2. But that's a super easy way. And if you don't even want to mess with that, and you've got rod tubes, as long as you have that foam extension on the bottom of it, you can stuff that thing. And the net, the net actually folds down in half too, so you don't have this long net sticking out of the back of the kayak.
Yeah, that, or if you have a black pack.
Yeah, rod tubes.
You can put it in the rod tubes. But it's a very subjective question. And it also is very subjective to what kayak you have, because if you have a new canoe unlimited, probably just throw it right in front of you on the because you have so much space. One thing I've seen that's cool, I've seen a lot of guys do that are PDL guys, or pedal drive guys, is they'll put that roto grip right on top of their pedal system and run it right down the middle. The beauty of that is it's completely out of your way. As long as it's above your pedals where it's not interfering there, it's kind of out of your way. And that's usually what guys are trying to figure out. How do I keep this thing completely out of my way until I need it? And so it's subjective, but I'm agreeing with Johnathan 100%. The roto grip is probably the easiest, quickest way to figure out how to just secure it.
And really it starts out with net every fish that you catch when you start out. Like just get in the habit, because that one bite that's your PB and you're like fumbling your net, like just take the time to work on it. Like every 5 or 6 trips, like I feel like I'm always moving stuff around on my kayak. Like sometimes it works perfect, other times it's like, gosh, that was a nightmare. We got to fix this.
Yeah. And when you get into this sport, like I'm not a tournament guy, made that well known, but I put them on my catch board every time.
Yeah.
Because if I ever do a tournament, I don't want to be the learning curve,
Yeah.
That's when I'm figuring out how hard that is to do.
As it flops around.
And honestly, I think that's almost as hard to do as catching the fish.
Yeah.
Is getting everything secured, set down,
Pictures,
taking a good
all
picture.
that.
I try to do it on all my fish just because it just becomes second nature. And like you said, I don't want to be trying to figure it out when I've got a PB on the board.
All right.
Well, that's that all makes a ton of sense because speaking from personal experience too, I didn't, you guys mentioned I'm green to this, so I started out, and I live in Minnesota. I'm primarily, my favorite thing to go after is northern pike. They're super aggressive. They fight like crazy. An average size is 28 inches, right? And it's just an aggressive, angry fish. And it's just so much fun. I was going out with a trout net, and I did happen to net it. My personal best was 34 inches. I got it in with the trout net, and it sliced right through, but luckily it landed in the kayak. And that was the day I was like, all right, I need a better net.
Yeah.
But again, not knowing, I just bought the one without the foam extension. So then now I'm kind of stuck in that, and I'm in a shorter kayak right now. I'm in the Van Hunks Pike, and I do fish out of a couple other ones too, but there's space is quite limited with that. So that is almost a struggle every time I go out. Had I known about the foam extension, it would have probably saved me a headache. So those are just like those little details where you just don't know until you get a kayak. And it's funny you mentioned you change up your kayak every time you go out. We've realized now the 20 to 30 times I've been out, I have changed something every time I've got home. And I just don't know if I'm ever going to be comfortable 100%, but I'm learning that depending on where I'm going and what I'm fishing for, I change it before I leave now. It just takes time.
Constantly tweaking.
Yep.
What else you got, JT?
All right. Yeah, this last one's actually from me because the weather has changed very quickly for me. Last week it was like pushing 60, and now the wind chill's been at 0 for basically 3 straight days. But winter's coming fast. Is there a risk to a fishing kayak in cold winter waters? Like, are they more susceptible to cracking? If I'm going to take mine down the river, that water temp might be hanging around 40 degrees. Will that cold water make the plastic a little more brittle? And I mean, what is, in your experience, what do people who are going to suffer through the winters, what can their kayaks do up here?
I don't think there's, as far as water wise, I don't think there's any, maybe ice, if you're pushing through ice, you may have, it's definitely going to get, more brittle. I think the biggest, is when we're talking about temperature, I think the biggest thing is, where you're storing it more than anything long term. If it's in a, garage that's, climate controlled, the hot to cold is probably the worst thing for it. So I wouldn't, store it in somewhere that's just completely heated, and then you go out to, temperatures like you have.
Yeah. And my background is in, marine products for the last 25 years. So working with flotation, whether that be an encapsulated foam, which is also all HDP, I think what it's more susceptible to impact. So should you be more careful with your kayak when you're moving it around and things like that? Absolutely. In the winter, because it is plastic, it is going to tighten up that plastic a little bit and be more susceptible to breaking or cracking. We had a guy in here who had one in his garage. It was below 0. It fell, put about a 4-foot crack down the side of it. Would that have happened in the summertime? I doubt it would have.
No.
So I think anything that's going to impact, your kayak, you need to be more careful with, dropping it out of the back of your truck, things like that. But I think that once it's in the water, I think you're probably safer. Yeah. And I think you're for sure onto something there with the storage. That's where we see more damage come in the wintertime when people, are tossing their kayak around in the wintertime. Once it hits the water, I think that's probably best case scenario for it, because that's what they're made for.
Yeah.
And 40 degrees, it almost acclimates and helps out that kayak. But impact, stay away from it.
Okay, that's good to hear. Because as of right now, the kayaks I have at home are sitting in the garage and taking a car space up. So
there you go.
I need to justify that with getting them out a few times this winter.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll have some problems in my household.
we try to tell people, try not to stand your kayak up on end
Okay.
in the winter, because it's just more susceptible to falling. It's a lot harder on that tail end, even if you're just lifting it up and setting it down. That, especially if you're setting it on concrete, because that concrete's going to be even colder than the air temp usually. And so, just kid gloves on storage and you'll be all right.
That brings up kind of a segue question then too, just to follow up, like for winter storage, if people, in the Midwest might put them up for the year, what's the best way to store them then? Do you have those, like the wall mounts, the flat mount? Like what would be your suggestion for storing them?
Yeah, definitely. You want to know, the weight of that kayak. If it's an autopilot, you're probably not going to put it on the wall.
Right.
If it's a, recreational bite, Jackson bite, you can probably put that on the wall, but you want to know the weight limit on your mounts and different stuff like that. Long term, I would stay away from like sawhorses, stuff that's going to put direct pressure. If you have some sort, if it's on a flat surface, that's perfectly fine because it's distributing that weight. But it's a lot of times when you get those points or the stress points that are just sitting on one spot there. But yes, store it, how you want. If it's outside, I would definitely try and cover it with something. It seems like mice and rats and stuff like that.
Pull your seats out.
Yeah, they'll chew on some of that stuff.
They'll find where it's warm, and that's usually where it is. We've replaced several seats from people who have mice come in and dig. The one thing I would say too is if you're putting it in like a heated garage, you usually keep your garage not like you do your house, but Johnathan mentioned it earlier, hot and cold does affect plastics. So if you're going to put it in your garage and you're going to let it set flat, throw a rug or a piece of cardboard or something underneath it to give it just a little bit of insulation, because we don't want to have it where that concrete is acclimating to whatever temperatures you have outside, because it's in the dirt. Then all of a sudden you've got the temperature of your room is higher. So now all of a sudden you've got that kayak in direct contact with 30 or below, and then the 60 degrees in the garage. That's where you could end up with some warping or some issues. So I always tell people, throw, 4 or 5 2x4s down, set it on there, throw a rug or a mat or even just a piece of cardboard, something so that that temperature differential isn't so bad on the kayak itself.
Yep.
Awesome. Great answers. It's like you guys know your stuff.
Every once in a while.
It's almost like we've ruined a kayak or two.
Yeah, that's fair.
Figured it out.
Man, JT, I'm excited to have you on here more. I'm excited to bring the forum onto the podcast as well and just get everyone together on the same page, and really appreciate you pulling off those questions and bringing those to us. And guys, if you guys have questions, get on the forum. Tag JT on there. If we can get them answered on here, we will.
Yeah.
And
well as pictures and videos. If you guys want to submit anything like that, we'll have some stuff here where we'll run through them and let people kind of see what everybody's doing. Anything you're out there catching, anybody out there in the wintertime or dragging in a northern pike bigger than 34 inches would be awesome. But yeah, man, get involved with that. We love it, and that's our way to interact with you guys.
Yeah, man. Travis, you got anything else?
That's it, man. JT, thank you, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you, JT. Guys, we'll get back at it. We're going to try and get going on these podcasts. Hopefully every other week we'll get a new one out to you guys. They'll be on the YouTube. They'll be on your platforms as far as podcasts, Apple Play, Google stuff, all that stuff too. So you can get on there and check it out. But hopefully we can start bringing you guys regular content, and looking forward to getting involved. But thanks again, Travis.
We're out.
See you guys.